Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. Got another interview for you today. I got to sit down with Anna Tierney, talk about her career, all the different facets of it, and of course she is on the new Amazon series Three Pines, and she was also a part of Psycho Goreman. If you somehow missed out on us raving about this movie all last year, check that one out as well. Really cool interview. Had a great time talking to her. Check it out. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Anna Tierney to talk acting, her career, and of course, Three Pines. Anna, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time to come on.
Yeah.
Before we get to Three Pines, I always like to ask people in the creative arts if you could go back to the beginning and first, when did you know you wanted to get into acting? And also, how did you make that first big step?
It was definitely something that I was around when I was younger. My dad was an actor. He passed away 8 years ago, but he was an actor all his life and was a really kind of larger than life character. And so I think I was around that when I was growing up, and we really enjoyed kind of, making people laugh and being, larger than life and a bit theatrical, and we're always very social people. So I think I got that initial bug maybe from my dad. And then I think I enjoy working on text. I enjoy working on new writing and stories. And there's something different than reading something on the page and then sharing it with an audience. It's such an incredible feeling to be able to bring a story to life in that way. And yeah, I think then when I went to drama school, I kind of, a very serious actor and kind of really believed in the power of the craft to change the world. I was all in. And, I don't know if I feel 100% that way anymore, but I think maybe in a more lighthearted way, I think it's about entertaining people at its sort of, basic level. And if it can do something extra after that, then that's good too. So yeah, that's kind of my,
sure.
Yeah.
But I guess not super just with your dad being an actor. Not everybody has that experience, but you went through like proper education and.
Yeah, I did. I had a training, and I think it's not necessary to have a drama school training. It's got to be something that you want. And especially nowadays, like having a classical theater training isn't something that you really necessarily need, especially if you're going to go into film and TV and you're going to skip theater entirely. But I think, yeah, we're kind of in this strange time for theater and the live arts, and with funding and everything being cut. And I think drama schools as well, just sort of closing down. And I think the theater sadly is gonna go under a big change, and it's the art form itself is gonna change in a big way. I forgot what the original question was.
No, that's fine. It does seem like theater might be. I'm not super dialed into theater. I really didn't pay much attention until they put Hamilton on Disney Plus, and I was like, "Oh, this is modern theater." Okay.
Great, eh? Yeah, Hamilton is incredible, and the way they filmed that too. They really made an effort to film it in a way that was really up close and personal and interactive, and move with all of the movement of the show. If you can achieve that with filming live theater, that's amazing. But yeah, that's a different budget.
yeah, much different. I'm sure that's not the norm, but
yeah,
it's just cool how far people can take it. And with the streaming age, it's also kind of made it click that why don't they do this with more productions?
Yeah, I did a couple of plays with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and something that they do is that they do record all of their performances, and I guess they have an archive, and I'm not sure what they do with it. They should really have a TV channel or something, because yeah, I think people would tune in. And they have that. The National Theatre has been really good with that. The National Theatre Live, they film certain productions, and you can watch them from all over the world, which is great. Yeah,
that is cool.
Yeah,
it's tough. It's in the States here, we'd have to go to Broadway, and I'm only 3.5 hours away from Broadway, but it's still another world just to enter the city limits and find parking and pay for it. It's it's
It's
not that
expensive.
accessible.
It's expensive. It isn't always accessible. And, theatre costs a lot of money to make. You think film and TV costs a lot. Like theatre can cost just as much. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, I think, theatre's making it accessible financially is important. But then it also needs, well, we're getting political here, but you need that government funding. And that is just, in the UK at least, it's just it's being slashed. So it's very hard to subsidize theatre.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's the same in the States here. I don't know about you. Said you're in Toronto right now. I don't know how Canada is, if they even have kind of a theater scene.
They do. They've got some of the bigger theatres that I don't know if you've heard of the Mirvish theatres. They own a bunch of the theatres here, and then they have a fringe scene as well, and some other great kind of solid spaces throughout the city. Not as much as in the UK, but no, there's a scene here. Yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I probably should have figured there was, because like Montreal is a very big cultural center, and Toronto is like everything is made in Toronto. So
Yeah, so much is being filmed here now, which is great to see, and not just things passing for American shows being filmed in Toronto or wherever in Canada. Now there's much more Canadian content, which is great. Like with 3 Points, which has been fantastic to film Canadian stories based on Canadian novels and film them in Quebec where they were set, which is great.
Yeah, I did think that was cool to see not only Quebec on the screen, but it's very much a Canadian story with the Indigenous people. It's a much different thing, even though a lot of similarities to here in the States.
Yeah.
But it's also universal. So it's not just like if you're not from Canada, it still can click.
Absolutely. And I mean, the writer of the show, Emilia de Girolamo, she's from the UK, and she wrote all those storylines before the big discovery of all the unmarked graves. And so they were really on that storyline in a way that, yeah, I don't know if it had been a purely Canadian production, whether they would have been more tentative about kind of going there and going in with such depth. But yeah, luckily we had a really amazing production team and creative team who really wanted to make sure those stories were front and center. And yeah, I think they've done really well.
Yeah, it's still airing. I believe I'm up to date, but it's very strong so far.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. How is it going from your stage background onto like a TV set, especially for a show as big as 3 Pines?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting transition. I spent many years working on the stage, and I'm used to kind of using my body in a way that will kind of transmit information across like a very, very large distance. So used to really being on the edge of my emotions and trying to kind of transmit that across a big space. And that's something that I've always felt really comfortable doing. But then with film and TV, you really have to be able to bring that back. And, I had to sort of try and stop my eyes watering at times, because I think I was so used to kind of transmitting emotion very readily on stage. And so for screen, it's this, you have to kind of really dial it back, and it's a different art form completely. But I had a lot of times when I was trying to keep my eyes open and not blink too much, and just look
the more you think about it, the more you blink.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's kind of really anti-real at times, even though you have to just be even more kind of acutely truthful. And yeah, it's an interesting transition.
And even further, your character is very kind of soft spoken. You're not even like the loud, boisterous character in the context of the show. So you really have to stamp it down even further.
Yeah. Totally.
Does anything translate, like hitting your marks and things like that? I imagine, because on stage you're not putting colored tape on the ground to stand here and look at the camera. And
Yeah, it really is so different, you know. In the theatre, you've got this long rehearsal process, and you've got, you know, at least 4 weeks, if not more, to get to know everyone and really bond as a family. And in film and TV, you kind of usually you land there on the day, and you do get to kind of mark through the scene, and hopefully it's kind of what you were imagining. Um, and then you go into a take, you know, once they're set up with lighting and everything. But it's so different. um and I wish there was more time for kind of playing and exploring and trying things different ways. But you know, they're working on a budget, on a tight budget, and you know, they can't spend all day on something. But I would say that for Three Pines, you know, they really did a fantastic job at allowing us to explore. And we had some rehearsals before shooting starts, so if you're lucky, you get that time kind of before everything begins. And we did some exploration of character with our director, Sam Donovan, who directed 4 of the episodes. And yeah, we got to kind of improvise in character and all of that kind of stuff. So we did a bunch of stuff before we got there that kind
That's
of,
cool.
yeah.
How did you come across the role?
So I actually found out about the project. I was working with Emilia de Girolamo, the creator of the show. I was working on a different show of hers that we filmed in London called Deceit, which was on Channel 4, and I think you can find it on HBO Max now. And after we finished filming, she reached out to me and sent me a really lovely message. And because she knew that I was in Toronto for some of the time, she told me about this project that she was writing, and it was going to be filming in Canada, and it was based on these novels. And so, you know, very generously, she kind of let me know that it was happening. And it meant I could then go and read the novels and really invest in the stories, and, you know, imagine myself as the character that I ended up auditioning for. That was the one I was kind of imagining in my head that I was closest to. And so that was a really unique audition process, because it meant that I got to spend months really thinking about it on a more subconscious level. Whereas normally you get an audition maybe at most a week before, and then you have to tape it, you know, usually sometimes even the day before. So you got a short turnaround. And so for this, that was a real gift to be able to, you know, have all this information that I just had been mining from the novels, and that was just kind of sitting there, which was great.
Yeah, that is interesting. I wanted to ask, if being that the show is a mystery, did you know the whole mystery before you started filming? But I guess if you read all the novels, yeah, you did.
I knew a fair bit. Yeah, I'd read the first 5 novels. But what's amazing in the adaptation is that Emilia has really managed to keep the tone and the character of, you know, the characters themselves, but also the places it's set. So Three Pines, and then the world in Montreal. She really has translated that amazingly well from novel to screen. But she's also, you know, like we said, with the Indigenous storylines, she has managed to kind of bring it up to date to reflect a more to reflect the Canadian identities that are actually here. And so I think there's certain new things, although that storyline was there in the novels, it wasn't as fleshed out. And so they really put that kind of front and center. So those will be new things that people will discover, and those were new things for us to discover as well. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. That's probably great for the fans too.
I think so. I mean, you know, it's hard to say. Like, of course, you want to feel like you felt when you read the books and when you fell in love reading the books, but then you don't want to know exactly what's coming. And it's for TV. It has to be its own thing. And I think Louise Penny, the author of the novels, she really understands that. Now, having seen the show, I think at first that's a really hard thing to let go of as a novelist, to let go of these stories that you've been writing for, over a decade. They're very personal to her.
Yeah.
But she really understands and sees that it's a new medium and it exists in its own unique way, and you have to kind of let it kind of take its own shape.
I think like what you were describing with keeping the spirit and the tone of it is probably the key. I would assume an author says, okay, this isn't exactly my story, but this is what I was going for roundabout. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, because I know there was a lot of like, I'm a big Stephen King fan, and everything he's done has been adapted one way or the other.
Yeah.
Some are very true, and some are not at all. So I imagine it's this tough thing what you see.
Yeah. I'm getting the impression that you're maybe a Star Wars fan as
Yeah,
well.
just a little bit.
Well, did you know that my dad was actually in the original Star Wars?
No, he was. That's awesome.
Yeah. He plays. He has like one or two lines, and he says to Luke Skywalker and Chewie, he says, "Where are you taking this thing?" And then he gets.
Oh, that's awesome. I can picture him
Well,
exactly.
what's that?
I can picture him exactly now.
Yeah. Yeah, they had
That's
no
so
idea
cool.
it would be a hit, and now they've got like a Star Wars figurines, and he's in the encyclopedia. But at the time, they just thought this was just some bonkers film they were doing.
Yeah, this goofy movie nobody wanted anything to do with, really.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So to rewind further behind Three Pines, everyone here at the podcast absolutely loved Psycho Goreman, so I have to ask you about it a little bit.
Yes, please. Yeah.
How did that one come about? Because that is a bizarre movie.
It is bizarre, and it's had such brilliant success. It's found its audience, and people are loving it, and I really, really loved it. And I was, a bit like with what we were saying with the Star Wars thing, I was kind of really pleasantly surprised with this project. And it was something that came to me when I first moved here. And of course, I'm just the voice of this evil Pandora. I wasn't the person in the costume for weeks on end. And so when I went into the studio to record the voice, and I was watching it and thinking, wow, this looks completely bonkers, and I did it. And then they had a screening at the Review Cinema in Toronto, and I was just blown away. It's so funny. And I think if you grew up in the 80s, you really appreciate the kind of special effects that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the director is just so talented with all that stuff. He's writing it, directing it, doing all the special effects. I'm sure along with many other people helping him, but just so inventive and crazy. And I don't know, you can kind of see the kid in him, I think, a little bit. That to me shows up when you're watching the movie. It's the kind of humor that when you're a child, you just allow yourself to like come up with these bonkers things and just run with it. And as an adult, you're like, no, I should, hone it more like this. And and you just take all the fun out of it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool one. Is that something that came across your desk because proximity again? You were in Toronto working on something else?
Yeah, they were. It's a Toronto production, and I think often when they want a baddie to do for the voice, it's usually a British accent.
That's true.
I think the reference was Tilda Swinton or something like that, and I thought, okay, yeah, I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's also funny you mentioned you weren't in the suit, because it was when Psycho Goreman came out, so it was a while ago, but I did interview the woman who was also in the suit.
No way.
Character.
No way.
Yeah,
that's
funny.
So awesome. Yeah.
It is strange to cast two people.
Did you say it's strange?
It seems strange. Like, it seems unnecessary that they had to cast two people to do it.
I guess. I mean, they did it with Darth Vader, didn't they? I met the original Darth Vader, who was the body of Darth he's like a West Country man with a lazy eye, and he's just huge.
Yeah, he was a bodybuilder.
yeah, perfect stature for Darth. But I think sometimes with that stuff, voice and body is different, I guess. And
Yeah.
some people who are incredible at physical work, and you know, I guess with this particular one, because they were looking for a British accent, they probably thought, okay, we have to go for an authentic British accent. We're not going to maybe ask the actor to do the voice. But you spoke to her, so maybe you've got a more of a scoop. How did she feel about it?
No, I mean, she just had fun doing it. And she was involved in, I want to say she was a producer. She had another role with the movie that kind of had her on set anyway, or had her
Mm-hmm.
around. But I wasn't trying to take a role away from you doing voice work because it was great. But I just thought it was interesting. It just kind of popped into my head.
I wonder. I mean, I think in the voice world it's quite normal, and we get that with video games too. You'll have, it just just depends where they're shooting. Maybe people are doing all the mocap in one country, and it's a production that's like English, or maybe it has to be Spanish, or so you'll often have voice actors stepping in for things that they physically didn't create, or if they didn't use actors at all and it's just animation. I mean, yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's true. Have you
Yeah.
done a lot of other voice work?
I've done a fair bit. I've done some video games and, some like car commercial adverts and a whole bunch of that stuff. And I really enjoy it. I like working with different accents, and I really enjoy working with my voice. And I think it's something my dad did as well. He worked with the BBC Radio, which they still do, BBC Radio plays. And I think that's all coming back into like popular culture now. People are really enjoying podcasts and serial stories. And that's something that my dad did a lot with the BBC. And so I think I always had an appreciation for that world and how you can tell a story just with your voice or with sound. It's another art form, like we said, TV, film, theater. It's another special thing that I think, there's some actors. I think Miriam Margolyes, who I don't know if you know that actress. I mean, you probably know.
Very familiar.
Yeah, she's in the Harry Potters as anyway, she's a real character. But on radio, she once played Juliet, and she looks nothing like a typical Juliet. And I think she was probably in her 40s by then or something like that. But her Juliet is supposed to be one of the best Juliets, in radio plays. But doesn't look anything like a Juliet. And I can relate to that too, being a really tall actor, not getting to play maybe the kind of, I don't know, typical younger female roles. I think voice and radio and podcasts, that's a place where you can kind of go anywhere that's not expected of you and isn't based on how you look. So it can be really freeing in that way.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a whole different style of acting. And I think maybe people who don't really follow the behind the scenes on pop culture and entertainment might not know how difficult it really is.
Yeah. You have to be very subtle again. I think, you've got to imagine you're just there in someone's ears, and you don't want to be shouted at if that's the case. It's got to kind of just reach you in the right way, and that's a real skill. Yeah.
Do you have a knack for accents? Because in Three Pines, you have like a very not super strong Canadian accent, not like the Alberta, kind of cartoony Canadian accent.
No, she's like because they're in Quebec, they're called Anglo. But yeah, just more of a kind of, I guess, a kind of standard Canadian accent. But yeah, I tried not to add too much of the A's and aboutes or any of that, because I think sometimes it's a bit of a stereotype. I don't hear it that much. And I feel like the Canadian accent versus the American accent is not too dissimilar. At least in Toronto, it isn't too dissimilar. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, Quebec, you also get the French. You get a little bit different.
Yes. Yeah. I think if I had been asked to play a Quebecois, that would have been another story. I don't think they would have asked me.
It's a whole other set of accents. So is that the only kind of accent stuff you've done? Do you have like an American accent? And
Yeah, like I won't do it. I won't.
I'm not trying to make you perform on site.
No, no, I love doing all the accents and all the regional, accents in the UK. And I mean, one of these video games that I did, I had to do a Norwegian accent, and my mum asked me to show her the accent, and she told me it sounded like Welsh, and I was like, I'm never ever.
Was that Assassin's Creed?
No, it was a winter sports.
Okay.
They were called like the Shack Daddy Bandits, and they did all kinds of different extreme sports. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You need a Norwegian accent for that, because I know there's a lot of video game companies in Toronto also.
Oh yeah, Ubisoft.
Yes, big one.
And in Montreal as well. I think they have a big base there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah, there's tons happening here. It's great.
So is that where you're based out of now, or do you go back to the UK still?
I go back to the UK and kind of go where the work is. So between the UK and Canada, and yeah, who knows wherever else,
Right, you just got to follow the project. I didn't mean to get too personal there with your living situation.
Oh no, not at all, not at all. And my partner's from Toronto, so yeah, we've been here, and at a time we were in London as well. And in this kind of line of work, you really just have to feel your way through it, because you can't predict what's coming. So yeah, just gotta flow. Yeah.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sounds like you're keeping busy, which is great, especially coming out of COVID, and Canada's lockdowns lasted really long time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's been a very, very hard time for so many people. And I think, I was very fortunate to be working on Three Pines during the pandemic. That was definitely not lost on me. Yeah, really, really fortunate to have done that project during such a strange time, and everyone just kind of gets on with it and is masked and just doing their best. And I think people are still masked on set. It's really? One of the few industries where I think that is still going strong. Yeah.
I guess to shut down production between the time you lose and the cost, it's like we can't take any chances on anything.
Exactly. But God, there's all kinds of stuff going around now. Let's not get into illness.
Yeah, we don't have to bring it down. It was a fun conversation.
No, but I was sick for, weeks, just, and it wasn't COVID, but it's just everything is coming out of the woodworks now. So if it's not COVID, it's something else, but it's still kind of, can knock you out. And yeah.
Yeah, well, sounds like you're better now, so that's good.
Yeah, I've been really nasal in so many interviews, but now it's finally starting to. So.
Well, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. You've been in some awesome stuff. Looking forward to see what else you do. And now I have to go back and rewatch and find your dad in Star Wars.
Yeah. Oh, it was
cool.
so nice chatting to you. And I'm so pleased that you've also watched Psycho Goreman. A lot of people have asked me about that film. So I'm always pleased to meet people who are fans of it. So yeah.
I feel like that's going to be one that you're going to hear about for a really long time, because it's going to have this like low running constant word of mouth where it's going to spread to all the right people.
Yeah, it's a little cult classic. I love one of those.
Yeah, and it's the perfect movie to be a cult classic because it's of that era.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything else you wanted to plug, like your social media accounts or anything like that?
No, yeah, you can find me on Instagram, and it's my name on there. But yeah, I'm not really on too much, but yeah.
You're too busy.
Exactly.
Very cool. How about your writing? We didn't really touch on that. Do you have anything out in the world, or is it just something you like to do for yourself?
Did you say writing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do write a bit. Yeah, I'm writing a witchy novel is one thing I'm writing. Yeah, I love kind of witchy genres. And then I'm working on a TV concept with a friend of mine. But yeah, more to come on that. I think I probably
Very cool.
shouldn't put it out there just.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I do enjoy writing and improvising work, and yeah,
That's awesome. Well, hold on to our name, and when it's time to get that out there, we'll do this again.
yeah, I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Anna one more time for taking time out of her schedule to come on and talk to us about her career acting, voice acting. She's, working in video games, movies, TV, all this awesome stuff. Three Pints is a great show. Check that out on Amazon Prime. Also, check out Psycho Goreman if you haven't. It's amazing. It's a great throwback style movie. Can't say enough good things about it. Please make sure you like and subscribe. We've got a lot more interviews, new movie coverage, Amazon screeners, other screeners, comic reviews, interviews, all the stuff you love coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. Speaking of not wanting to miss out, make sure you check out So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All of accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. It's kind of a slice of life, coming of age, done in the style of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on and love. We write it like a sitcom. We have a great time doing it. Ton of issues available, ton more on the way. You can find all of our available issues on socialstudiescomic.com. A bunch of them are on Comixology, and we're getting a bunch more on Global Comics. Check it out wherever you get your comics. Thanks.